What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So at this point of the Stanley Cup playoffs, 3 teams have been eliminated from the second round, that being the Colorado Avalanche, Carolina Hurricanes, and Boston Bruins. I waited to make this video today because I thought maybe the Edmonton Oilers would lose, but I'll just do a different video on the Oilers or the Canucks depending on who loses Game 7. I wanted to look at these 3 teams because they came up short. I know Boston didn't have cup or bust expectations, but these teams did at the end of the day come up short, didn't even make the conference finals. So they're going to have pretty massive off seasons ahead, and I think that each team has drastically different off seasons when looking at it. I'm going to reference the Clint Eastwood movie, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I made a little graphic, but I think Boston, it's pretty good looking at them coming into this offseason. It's more exciting than dread. The Colorado Avalanche have a couple problems that they need to work out, but it's bad, but it's not that bad. And then the ugly with the Carolina Hurricanes and all their pending free agents. So we're going to look at each team. I'm going to break it down because next season, Boston, again, this was more of a transitional year, but the other two was pretty disappointing. Next season, all 3 of these teams, I think the expectation should be to make a Stanley Cup final. Boston is going to have that high pressure, high expectations next year. So they need to do a lot of work this summer in order to potentially get to a Stanley Cup final. I mean, Colorado made it in 2022. Boston made it in 2019. Carolina, it's been a while. So these teams need to make it back, need to go on a deep run next year, and we're going to break it down how they potentially could do that this season. So up first, let's look at the Boston Bruins. When looking at the Boston Bruins, we knew that this was not a lost season. They still were expected to make the playoffs, but dealing with, I believe it was like $5 to $6 million in cap bonus overages from the deals like Bergeron and Krejci. They went so aggressive at the deadline, lost all their pending UFAs last year. There just wasn't that much expectations. The fact that they were a 109-point team, the fact they took the Florida Panthers division winners to 6 games, moral win, if you want to call it that. But I think if they have a good offseason, that they can easily be back in the mix and maybe not 2023 set records, but yet again, a high-level contender. When looking at their salary cap situation, it's pretty solid. It's pretty goddamn solid. Basically, all their core pieces forward and defense-wise is locked up. Jake DeBrusk is going to be an interesting one. We'll talk about him. But when looking at this team, the clear, obvious thing heading into this offseason is Swayman and Ullmark. Ullmark has 1 year left at $5 million. Swayman is a restricted free agent, and I think we can agree, based on honestly what we saw in the regular season, but the postseason just proved it even more. Jeremy Swayman's probably ready to be a legit number 1, ready to handle 55, 60 games in a season, and the Boston Bruins shouldn't be paying $5 million for a backup goaltender, although Ullmark would be the best backup goaltender in the entire NHL, arguably the best backup, arguably the best 1B. I think they got to move off him. I think they need to trade him, and there's such a hunger for a goalie market. We're going to talk about it with Carolina and Colorado. They could use an upgrade in net. I think Boston should look at trading Ullmark. If they can get a legit second-line center, they need a legit first-line center, but if they can add a top 6 forward or even a second-pair defenseman for Linus Ullmark, I think you highly consider that. I don't think you're trading Ullmark for picks and prospects, considering Boston, they're probably going to stink in like 4 to 5 years regardless once McAvoy and Pastrnak are no longer in their prime. So if they can get an NHL-ready team for a team that is a contender, but is just missing that goaltender, I think they pull the trigger on that. Now, when looking at Swayman, I think you lock him up. He's only 25 years old. Last year at a .920 save percentage. This year, a .916 in 44 games. I think you lock him up on a 6 to 7 year deal, around 7.5. If he's willing to do that, I think he could hold out, maybe even get like $8 million, considering looking at the Sorokin deal, although Sorokin was better last year than Swayman was this year. Swayman was far better in the playoffs. So I think you lock him up somewhere between the mid-7s. If you get rid of Ullmark, you're going to have $25 million of salary cap. So when looking at it, if you get Swayman at around $7 million, that goes to 18 going back to this. DeBrusk, it's a toss-up. I think he made himself a decent amount of money this playoffs. He played very good. If you want to bring him back, it should only cost you like $4.5 million. The rest of those guys, for the most part, are league minimum guys. I think Grzelcyk, we can agree, is probably gone. He was bad this season, so they can round out their defense core with some low-end guys. And then you're probably going to have like roughly $10 million to spend this season, this offseason. It's very exciting if you are a Boston Bruins fan. If they do move off Ullmark, I think that a guy that they should target is a Matt Duchene, who is a little bit older, but played so good with the Dallas Stars. He could maybe walk in and be your number 1 defenseman, offensive dynamo. Lindholm, might have to give him a little bit of an overpay considering he is 29 years old. He's going to want an 8-year deal, $7-ish million. Steven Stamkos could even make sense. I don't know. If they were in different conferences, I could definitely see that. I'm not sure he's going to go from Tampa Bay to Boston, kind of rivals to a degree, Atlantic Division rivals. And then in terms of a trade, I think I think they could definitely look at potentially a Nikolai Ehlers that just became available. I think that would be a good add at only $6 million next season. They may have to trade Brandon Carlo in that trade because Winnipeg would want some defense, so I'm not sure you 1000% do it. But they need to be aggressive in terms of getting legit top six forwards. Goaltending solidified. Just sign an okay, decent backup, or if you think someone in your system can do that, 1000%. But get aggressive, get some offensive talent because right now I trust their defense, I trust their goaltending. I don't think that they can create enough goals. Swayman kind of carried them in that Toronto Maple Leafs series. They didn't really generate a ton on offense, but no, Toronto didn't as well. If they're going to go on a deep run, they're going to need far more offense than relying on Charlie Coyle and Pavel Zacha to be kind of engines of your offense outside of David Pastrnak. And Marchand is getting up there in age. He has regressed a little bit over the last couple of years. Next up, Colorado Avalanche. The bad. When looking at the Colorado Avalanche, we got a little thing. We're gonna go to this here. Colorado is in an interesting situation considering we don't know what's going to happen with Valeri Nichushkin. When looking at Valeri Nichushkin, when he is healthy, he's on one of the best contracts in the entire NHL. He has like 5 or 6 years left at only $6.1 million. So although I've seen people say they should 1000% move off him, he missed basically, he played like the first 3 or 4 games in each of the last. Well, he played the first round in this year, but in game 3 or 4, he got suspended for 6 months because now he's in stage 3. And then last year against Seattle, he also left abruptly in the playoffs. They went on to go lose. I understand people not trusting Valeri Nichushkin, but it's easier said than done trading an above a point per game guy, like a goal per game guy in the playoffs. It's only making $6.1 million. Now, without Nichushkin on the salary cap sheet, they have $23 million in cap space this summer. That's also assuming that Landeskog's not going to come back. I don't think that he's going to at this point. So if Nichushkin comes back, that's $17 million, his $6 million. So they have one prominent restricted free agent, as you can see, Casey Middlestat. I think that he's worth probably 6 to 7, 6.5. If you're going to lock him up long term, I think it's going to be an 8-year deal around $6.5 million. If you want to bridge him, which he maybe would be down to do, it'd probably be like 3 years, $5.5 million. But that's your main spend for this Colorado Avalanche team. When looking at their defense core, I think they're just going to re-sign Jack Johnson and Caleb Jones on like pretty cheap deals. I don't see them re-signing Sean Walker. They already have all 4 of their defensemen under contract above $4 million. Sean Walker was not very good with the Colorado Avalanche. I think he's going to get $4 million on the open market. So I don't think you want to be paying 5 defensemen $4 million or more. So I think he walks. I think they go cheap with that. So you're left over if Nichushkin, Middlestat, and then you just fill out. Duren's a very interesting case study considering sign the league minimum this year for Colorado. Is he going to want? I think he can probably get $4-ish million on the open market, 56 points this season, although it was pretty heavily involved due to the fact he was playing with Nathan MacKinnon. If they let Drouin walk, they're going to have roughly $10 million after the Middlestat, Jones, and Johnson deals to kind of retool that bottom 6. I think I'd let Drouin walk. I think I would let him walk. If you can try those bargain bin deals and put him with Nathan MacKinnon, they're probably become 45 to 50 point scorers. I wouldn't massively overpay a Jonathan Drouin, even though that connection was there that season. Now, when looking at goaltending, Georgiev is under contract next season at $3.4 million. Do you somehow package Georgiev and picks to another team to get a Markstrom? He's an expiring deal, so teams would be willing to pick him up. They need someone to play goalie if they are trading their premier goalie. So would they be willing to package a bunch of picks and prospects in Georgiev to go out and get a Markstrom, to go out and get a Saros? It's possible. I don't know, considering they would have to give a massive extension to them, and their salary cap situation is fine. It's a solid salary cap situation, but as you see, Rantanen needs a new deal at the end of next season. I think I maybe would pull the trigger on a goaltending deal just because we saw maybe an expiring guy, maybe a Linus Ullmark. I think that would probably be the perfect fit for Boston overall. I'm not sure Boston would want Georgiev back, but if they could work out some type of Ullmark trade, that would be great for them. An expiring guy similarly to, why am I blanking on his name? Darcy Kemper. Darcy Kemper came in, won them the Stanley Cup, was an expiring guy, traded a first-round pick, then he left the next season. So I think they should be aggressive in the goalie market. I'm not sure they're going to pull off a Saros level, but I think after seeing Georgiev in the last 2 playoff overall years, I think you do need to upgrade in net. Now, when looking at the Carolina Hurricanes, they're the last team. So Colorado, I think you bring back Middlestat. Drouin, I think you let walk. Walker, you let walk, no pun intended. And then you kind of just spread that $7 to $8 million you would spread on Walker and Drouin to like 3 to 4 players instead of just the 2 players, and you make it work from there. Carolina, why am I blanking on it? Carolina, they are in a really tough spot. Carolina's in a really tough spot. Let's pull up their cap friendly. They have 11 legit roster players that are either unrestricted or restricted free agents. And on top of that, the following season, you got guys like Kuznetsov, Foss. Those actually aren't that important. But the defense core is also basically expiring next year as well. Orlov, Slavin, Burns. They are in a very ugly situation, in my opinion, and I'm not sure how exactly they're going to tackle this. Yes, they do have some cheap guys coming in that can overhaul that, like a Jackson Blake, like a Bradley Nadeau. In terms of the defense core, Scott Morrow, I think, is going to slot into an NHL role next season. So they have some guys, but still, $27 million this summer with all these unrestricted and restricted free agents. The guys that I think are gone, Natchez, Pesce, and Shea. I don't think you can bring them back. Natchez seems like an all but foregone conclusion, especially considering he's a restricted free agent. I expect Carolina to trade him for like a late first, maybe, and an okay prospect. I don't think there's going to be that would be a solid return. I think Carolina's going to opt for prospects and picks that they can develop and then eventually get cheap labor from on an ELC or a bridge deal, similarly to what they got with Natchez over the last 5 years. So I think they're going to trade Natchez away, and then Shea and Pesce, you can maybe trade their unrestricted free agency rights. But yeah, both of those guys are going to get north of $4.5 million on the open market. And if you're Carolina, it doesn't appear like they're prioritizing that. I think they are going to re-sign Jake Gensel. It's probably going to cost you $8.5 to $9 million. So just there, a third of your salary cap space that you have evaporates. Jarvis, I think on a bridge deal would be around $6.5 million. They want to lock him up long-term on an 8-year deal, which I think might be the best option. But I understand in the meantime, they need to make the salary cap work. I think a long-term deal, 6, 7, 8 years would be $8 million. So just from Gensel and Jarvis alone, that's either $15.5 million or $17 million out of the $27 million. You look at it, the other guys that I think that they are going to find a way to keep. Jack Drury, Jordan Martinook, and Jaden Chatfield. I think that's only going to cost around like a combined $6 million. So at this point, how much is that? Then you only have like $5 million remaining in terms of their salary cap situation. And again, you're letting Pesce, Shea, you maybe bring back D'Angelo. Who else is there? I think you probably you spend the remaining $4 to $5 million on Tara Vinen in terms of bringing him back. I think that he's been a very important piece for them for the last 4 to 5 years. If you can get him on a 5-year deal, $5 million might kind of stink towards the end of that, but it would be very good value in terms of the near future of them contending. In terms of goaltending, I don't really know what they're going to do considering Freddie Anderson is under contract. Ront is as good as gone. Kochetkov's going to be the backup. Kochetkov has 3 more years at $2 million. That's a pretty solid deal. They do have the prospects and the picks to pull off a massive goalie deal, but again, when looking at it, they don't have the cap space to sign an extension after this in terms of signing a big-time goalie. Soros, you could trade for him next year, get him at $5 million, but what happens when he balls out for your team and then wants an 8 by 8.5? Then you don't have the money to do that. So I think they're probably just going to trust in Kochetkov. I know that might be bold in Freddie Anderson, even though he shat the bed in Game 7. I think Colorado would be the more aggressive team when it comes to goaltending. I think considering how tight Carolina's salary cap situation is, they kind of just got to run back Anderson and Kochetkov just because they're like a combined $5.5 million. They are very cheap, and they've proven that they can get it at least done in the regular season. And Freddie was playing good at the start of the playoffs, but then eventually did kind of unravel. So when looking at these situations overall, again, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Boston, if you're a Boston fan, you're excited heading into this offseason after exceeding expectations. Colorado, you know you're going to be in the mix next season, but I do think you maybe need to be aggressive with a goaltender. Natrushkin, that's a bad situation. You don't know what's going to happen with that. You hope Devontae's bounces back. I don't think that he was that good this season. His extension is kicking in. And then Carolina, it's kind of keep what you can, let the rest walk. I'm not sure you can make it a massive upgrade at goal. They're still going to be a very good team next year, but I kept on repeating it throughout these playoffs, throughout the season on the whole. This was probably their golden opportunity, unless Scott Morrow walks in and is a legit top 4 defenseman at $800K. Jackson Blake, Nadeau, the same case. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that's realistic. So I think Carolina might be taking a step back next season. So let me know in the comments, what do you think about these 3 teams? What order do you think they finish next season in terms of regular season? Who goes the furthest in the playoffs? Colorado, I think, has the best chance of winning a Stanley Cup just because they have those 3 superstars. But I know that Carolina for the next decade are going to be a highly competitive team, considering even though they don't have the best salary cap situation overall, Their two young stars are locked up long term for what is that, $7.75 million and $9.75. They're going to be a high level team, especially with Ron Brindamore behind the bench. But let me know in the comments, what do you think? I'll be seeing the next one.